Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourner's Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Today, a whole swath of the United States, including the town I live in, is going through a deep freeze. So it's a perfect day to stay indoors and watch monster movies. And what better monster movie to watch during a deep freeze than The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas from 1957, starring Peter Cushing and Forrest Tucker. I think of The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas as the definitive Yeti movie. It's not the movie where the Yeti gets the most screen time, but it is the movie where they capture the vibe and feel of being on a doomed mountainside expedition being stalked by the Yeti. They capture this vibe to perfection, in my view. Some modern audiences might find this movie to move slowly because, again, you don't see the Yeti a whole lot. The Yeti is suggested. You hear a baleful shriek from the next mountain over. You see a claw. You find footsteps. And, slowly over time, the monster is revealed. There are other Yeti movies where they show you the Yeti right up front, but the impact is less, I think. In this movie, Peter Cushing plays an explorer who is determined to find the Yeti, even though the local wise man tells him the creature you are searching for does not exist. And Peter Cushing is joined on this expedition by a crass, glory-hunting American businessman played by Forrest Tucker. And why is it always the American that gets this kind of role? Anyway, and the debate goes on among their group about what to do with the Yeti. Should they just find the Yeti? Should they capture a Yeti? Should they kill a Yeti and bring its carcass back to civilization? What exactly is the real purpose of the mission? Meanwhile, as you can imagine, members of their expedition meet horrible fates out on the frozen mountain sides. But as the movie progresses, you start to realize more and more that the Yeti are not directly causing any of the people's deaths. It's not like the monster just approaches people and rips them to shreds. Usually their cause of death is something secondary, like the person gets scared and runs and falls off a ledge or something like that. And slowly, Peter Cushing starts to develop a theory that the Yeti are not just mindless monsters, they are a previously unknown branch of primate evolution, which is just biding its time up here in the distant mountains, waiting for humanity to annihilate itself so that their hour will come. The one thing I'm not crazy about in this movie is when you actually do see the face of the Yeti, it leaves a lot to be desired. I think that it seems a little awkward and almost goofy when you see the allegedly wise face of this mysterious creature. But the overall Yeti costumes, the size, the bulk, and so forth are pretty good. And the way that the Yeti is depicted acting on the mountainside is realistic enough. In other words, it's realistic. If there were such a thing as the Abominable Snowman, this is what you would expect it to behave like. I love the final scene at the end when Peter Cushing repeats the wise man's words back to him, understanding their new secret meaning. And overall, this really is my favorite Abominable Snowman movie. There were others like The Snow Creature or Snow Beast that address the Yeti in a different way. For instance, Snow Beast, the Yeti creature was just a mindless monster that just loved to kill. Snow Beast was pretty good, but about half of the movie was set in the United States after they had captured the creature and brought it back here. This movie takes place where it belongs, on the mountainsides in the Himalayas. It was actually filmed in the mountains of France. And you really have a feeling of being isolated out on the slopes as they show the expedition braving the terrible weather. It's interesting because as a writer, I know that one of the main tricks to use in a horror story is to isolate your protagonist. And usually you isolate your protagonist by putting them in a confined space, like, say, in a haunted house. That's a perfect example. Well, in my book series, which all takes place outdoors in a haunted forest, I isolate my protagonists in a different way. They're outdoors, they have freedom of movement, they're not confined, but they're way out in the middle of nowhere, too far away for anyone to, reach civilization and get help. And that's the kind of isolation of the protagonist that this movie uses. Because when they show the expedition, you see that, they're on wide open territory. You literally could see the Yeti coming a mile away if you were looking in the right direction when they were approaching. So, the people are certainly not trapped in that sense, but they are isolated up there because the inclement weather confines them to the base. They can't go wandering off or they're going to freeze to death. Anybody who gets an injury, it's going to be all over for them. And in that sense, the protagonists are isolated even though they're outdoors. And I can relate to that because I do that in all of my books. I isolate my protagonists outdoors. And as one of my characters said, how can you be trapped outdoors? Well, you can very easily if you cannot access help or civilization. The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas was Peter Cushing's second Hammer film. He'd made this right after Curse of Frankenstein. And of course, Curse of Frankenstein was a very successful and popular film. This movie sort of got overshadowed by Curse of Frankenstein. And of course, the next year, Peter Cushing played Professor Van Helsing in Horror of Dracula, and then it was off to the races as far as Hammer films were concerned. Peter Cushing was in a million of these Frankenstein and Dracula films. They never did go back and do another Abominable Snowman film, which is a shame because I consider this film to be an overlooked gem. Listen, if you enjoy vintage monsters and classic horror, check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. Basically, I write books for people who enjoy monster movies. I'll post a link to my books in the description for this video. I'm self-published on Amazon. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books. Thanks for letting me talk to you some about the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.